So today, let's start out by taking a look at working with background jobs in Ubuntu Server. Now, the idea of a background job is to allow us to multitask. So typically, what happens is if we run a command, let me use Nano here to open up a text editor. Okay, so now I'm in my text editor. Now, this is the only thing that I'm doing. And this is what we've done so far, is we've just been working with jobs in the foreground. So let me control X to get out, and now I come back and I can do something, or I can do a ls forward slash, and I'm doing ls dash L, and my command executes, and then I don't do anything else until my command is done. A better example for this would be something like, let me do a sudo apt update. And then while it's working, I'm not doing anything with the system, right? I'm just letting this function in the foreground, and I'm kind of stuck. I'm waiting for it to get done. So the idea of backgrounding jobs is to do them in the background while I maintain control in the foreground and can do something else. That's the whole premise behind backgrounding jobs. And if we think about it in terms of windows, right, we can have multiple windows open on a station at the same time. And then just whatever window I'm in, that's what I'm working on. Everything else is still functioning in the background, but I'm working on whatever is in the foreground, the window that I currently have active. All right, same thing here, except that instead of windows, we have jobs. So let me show you how we can do this. I'm going to start by opening up Nano. I'm just going to have a regular text editor window open. Now, I want to switch this to the background. So I'm going to hit Control-Z. I want you to look at this down here. So it says use FG, stands for foreground, to return to Nano. And right here, I have a job. It's job number 1. You see that little plus sign. It says stopped. It's not really stopped. It's still running. It's just, not actually doing anything because I'm not working in it. And you see the command there is Nano. All right, so I'm going to clear the screen and ls, and I'm doing a bunch of other stuff. And then anytime that I want to go back to that, I can type FG, and that will take me back to, and this is the key, the most recent background job that I had. It's not any background job. It's the most recent background job that I had. So can I have more than one job backgrounded? Absolutely. Let me open up Vim. And then I'm going to do Control-Z to take that to the background. And now you'll see I have job number 2. Well, that begs a question. How do I know what jobs I have? Well, we enter the command jobs, and it will show us our background jobs. I have job number 1, job number 2. And job number 2 has the plus, which means that was the most recently used one. So if I hit FG, it'll take me to Vim. Control-Z to go back, clear my screen. Now let's say I wanted to go to Nano. Well, what I do is I just specify FG foreground job 1, and that takes me to Nano instead of Vim. Now if I Control-Z, do a jobs, you'll see that that one now has the plus sign. Okay, so I can open up a command and I can run it in the and I can switch it to the background. What if I wanted to start up a job in the background? Can I do that? Well, sure. Here's how we do that. I'm going to use a command. We haven't used this before, htop. We'll talk about it more in another video here in a few minutes. But I want to open htop in the background automatically. So I'm going to do htop space ampersand and hit enter. Now, you'll see that that goes to job 3. It didn't pop up here. If I do jobs, you'll see I now have job 3 as htop. Now I can go into any of those jobs. I'm going to foreground my VI, and I'm going to work here a little bit. By the way, it's important to notice or note that Control-Z works. You just want to be sure that, go back to FG. I'm going to go to insert mode. This is VIM. Control-Z. Notice it doesn't foreground or background my job. And that's because it's going to take it, and since I'm in insert mode, it's going to insert whatever I put in into the document. And so you see it has Control Z there. So remember, to get out of insert mode, I can hit the escape key. Now I'm in command mode, and Control Z will work just fine. Okay. So now I have multiple jobs. Now, what if I want to close out of those jobs? Let's say I'm done with Nano. I've decided I don't need that anymore. So I'm going to go to foreground 1, and then I'm just going to close Nano. So I'm going to Control X. Now, if I look at my jobs, oops, there we go, clear that out and do jobs. And now you're going to see I have job 2, job 3, job 1 has gone away. I'm going to go to foreground job 3. We'll take a look at this in a few minutes in another video. So I'm going to F10 to quit that out. And now I have just the one job. Okay, straightforward enough, right? Now, one thing to bear in mind is once you close, once you close your session, all of the jobs you had backgrounded are automatically closed. So probably want to be a little careful of that if you start using a lot of background jobs. By the way, one really big benefit of using background jobs is if you're working in a text editor, you're working on a document, developing a script, something like that, being able to jump back out and look something up on your system. If you're working on a script, you might want to try to run a command, make sure it does what you want it to do, make sure you get the syntax right, jump back into your script, put it in. So very convenient ways of doing things. Now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to foreground job 2, and I am going to quit. And since I changed it, I'm going to do the Q exclamation point so it doesn't ask me to save. All right, now I have no jobs. Now, let's say we're going to take a job like the apt update. So I'm going to do sudo apt update, and I want to do that in the background. Notice that actually doesn't really give me that option. Well, actually, it kind of does give me that option. But one thing you got to know is that when you do that background, there are some things like this right here that are going to give information to the console anyway, even though you've backgrounded the job. So now I hit Control C here, and you'll see that I do have the job sudo app update. Let me clear the screen, do jobs. Okay, you see that I did have the job. It's now finished and automatically closed, but it is still going to interact with the, or is still going to send messages to your console, which might interrupt what you're doing. Now, I want to show you another technique that we can use to deal with this, and that is running multi-user. So Linux is a multi-user, multitasking operating system, which means multiple users can be using it simultaneously, or even the same user more than once. It'll treat them as different users, and each user can be running multitasks. All right, so how would I create another session? Let's say I've got something running here that I don't want to interrupt, but I want to go to another session as well. All right, you can run up to 7 from the console. You can run up to 7 virtual terminals. And the way you do that is by using your alt and your function keys. So I am on terminal 1. In fact, let me do a PS here. And we're going to talk about the PS command here in a few minutes, but this shows in another video. This shows you processes, and you'll see I'm on TTY1. And so I'm going to hit Alt F2. And that's going to take me to right here. You see I'm logging into TTY2. So I'm going to do log in as me. And let me do a PS-A. And you're going to see now I have things running on TTY1 and TTY2. So I'm going to open up Nano here. And then I'm going to hit Alt F1 to take me back to my first session. And here is my first session. And I'm working on things in my first session, and I'm having fun, and I want to go back to my second session. So I hit Alt F2 and there I'm at. And then I can do the same thing to go to Alt F3 and open up a third session. And you get the idea. I can now run multiple sessions. I just have to remember where things are at by hitting Alt and then F1, F2. Some of them, older versions or some versions of Linux might have you hit Control Alt and then your function key. That'll actually work in this version of Ubuntu Server as well. So you can do Control Alt, or I normally just do Alt. But if Alt doesn't work on your particular version of Linux, then go to Control Alt and see if that works. All right. And then when I'm done with it, I just exit out of that session. It takes me back to my login. I don't think I had anything on 3 or 4. Right, I can just exit out and that closes me down. Now let me do another PS-A and you'll notice that the only jobs I have running now are on TTY1. Okay, so that gives you a little bit of an idea of how we can work with background jobs in Ubuntu Server.